Greetings, fellow rodents. Socialism is by many almost regarded as the devil himself, as the cancer in the body of an otherwise pure capitalist society. Unfortunately, many of the haters of socialism do not have a clue about what socialism really is. Stay tuned for a dive into the truths behind the Red Scare. Most people know socialism as a term used side by side with communism, fascism, and even Nazism. The Cold War defined the image of socialism in most Western countries as a force of suppression, slavery, and evil. When comparing socialism and capitalism, we tend to view them as opposites, capitalism being in favor of private markets and socialism being in favor of a state-controlled economy. But this is not entirely adequate. Socialism is not an all-controlling state, whose nature has been made popular through the American Red Scare and works of science fiction. To tell you the truth, this image is a fantasy, and has very little to do with socialism. This is not to undermine the terrors committed by Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong, or the so-called Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But these rulers and regimes do not represent true socialism. They are perverted dead ends that grew out of an idea that they weren't able to pull off. Essentially, they're nothing but other forms of fascism. Socialism has always been the shadow of capitalism. It is the force of criticism against the capitalist system, just like capitalism was the force of criticism against the system of feudalism that suppressed most of Europe until the French Revolution in 1789. But capitalism didn't seem to pull off what it had set out to do. The unfair society with lords and serfs seemed to prevail in a new form, only now represented by capitalists and workers or proletarians. It was still a system of haves and have-nots, and socialism was to be the system beyond capitalism, where social classes were abolished and everyone was finally equal. 2 years after the Russian Revolution, Lenin stated that this was not socialism, but merely a step on the road towards the future society they were struggling to achieve. He called it state capitalism, which is the term that is usually confused with socialism, thanks to, among others, the guy that followed him, Joseph Stalin. State capitalism was simply when the capitalists were replaced by the government, where the government essentially had the same function that the capitalists had under private capitalism. So what does this mean? Well, it means that the Soviet Union was never a socialist society. Neither was China, North Korea, or any of the other countries that are often labeled as communist dictatorships. Despotism is simply incompatible with socialism. Socialism is what comes after. A society without social classes, where both wealth and power is spread equally, where there are no haves and no have-nots, and where workers themselves control the means of production, and are the ones who decide what to do with what they produce. It is a utopian society, which thus far has never existed. I hope you enjoyed this episode of History Hamster. Like, comment and subscribe if you want more videos like this in the future. I also recommend my video on sex and prostitution in ancient Rome, or my 10 facts about the ancient Egyptians. Don't forget to check out and like my Facebook and Tumblr page for updates on future videos. And as always, stay rodent people, stay rodent.